Shalom. Welcome back, everybody. It's your sister Shia. Back again with a short read on the Pani taboo, which is talking about the overreaching of seas in Hinduism. So I have this thing about water where I don't like big bodies of water. I don't like to go too deep when I'm at the beach. I really just like to put my feet in the water at the edge of the sand. But um, let's take a look and see what they're talking about. So the question was, were we ever supposed to cross the ocean or the seas? Let me share my screen. Okay, so the Pani or black water represents the proscription of the overreaching seas in Hinduism. According to this prohibition, crossing the seas to foreign lands causes the loss of one's social respectability as well as the putrefaction of one's cultural character and prosperity. The offense of crossing the sea is also known as Samudro Langana or Sagaro Langana. The Dharma Sutra of Budayana lists sea voyages as first of the offenses that cause the loss of Varna. The Dharma Sutra suggests a person can wipe away this offense in 3 years by eating little at every fourth mealtime, bathing at dawn, noon, and dusk, standing during the day, and seated during the night. The reasons behind the proscription include the inability to carry out the daily rituals of traditional Hindu life and the sin of contact with the characterless, uncivilized Lekka creatures of the foreign lands. The Malekka is a Sanskrit term referring to foreign or barbarous peoples in ancient India, as contradistinguished from Aryas or Aryas. Malekka was used by the ancient Indians originally to indicate the uncouth and incomprehensible speech of foreigners, and then extended to their unfamiliar behavior. An associated notion was that crossing the ocean entailed the end of the reincarnation cycle, as the traveler was cut off from the regenerating waters of the Ganges. So the Ganges or Ganges is a transboundary river of Asia which flows through India and Bangladesh. The 2,525 kilometer or 1,569-mile river rises in the western Himalayas in the Indian state of Uttarakhand, whatever. It flows south and east through the Gangetic Plain of North India, where it receives tributaries from Nepal. Such voyages also meant breaking family and social ties. In another respect, the inhabitants of the land beyond the Black Water were Huglis, bad-spirited and monstrous swines who could sometimes mask their true ugliness by presenting an illusion of physical beauty and superiority. The Mlecca people were spawned by immoral reprobates and blasphemously held religious belief and Nastika, albeit in different forms. Astika and Nastika are concepts that have been used to classify Indian philosophies by modern scholars as well as some in Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain texts. The various definitions for Astika and Nastika philosophies have been disputed since ancient times, and there is no consensus. They are understood to have rejected the Vedas and have ceased to worship Bhagavan, the divine Vedic god, in favor of concocted false religions and irreligions with contemptible manners of reverence. Their societies are immoral and built on deceit, subjugation, and corruption. Therefore, it was thought that true Hindus should not come under their influence or embrace their beliefs, as they will be just as deserving of contempt as a Malekka. During the Portuguese age of exploration, Portuguese sailors noted that Hindus were reluctant to engage in maritime trade due to the Pani prescription. In the 18th century, the Banayas, or the what is that, Banayas of North India, even considered the crossing of the Indus River at Attic to be prohibited and underwent purification rituals upon their return. However, not all Hindus adhered to the proscription so as to gain monetary wealth. For instance, Hindu merchants were present in Burma, Muscat, and other places around Asia and Africa. Let's see. Check out what maritime trade. So, maritime transport or ocean transport and fluvial transport, or more generally, waterborne transport, is the transport of people or passengers or goods, cargo, via waterways. Freight transport by sea has been widely used throughout recorded history. The advent of aviation has diminished the importance of sea travel for passengers, though it is still popular for short trips and pleasure cruises. Transport by water is cheaper than transport by air, despite fluctuating exchange rates and a fee placed on top of freighting charges for carrier companies known as the currency adjustment factor. Maritime transport accounts for roughly 80% of international trade, according to UNCTAD in 2020, or UNCTAD. Maritime transport can be realized over any distance by boat, ship, sailboat, or barge, over oceans and lakes, through canals, or along rivers. Shipping may be for commerce, recreation, or for military purposes. While extensive inland shipping is less critical today, the major waterways of the world, including many canals, are still very important and are integral parts of worldwide economies. Virtually any material can be moved by water. However, water transport becomes impractical when material delivery is time critical, such as various types of perishable produce. Still, water transport is highly cost effective with regular schedulable cargoes, such as transoceanic shipping of consumer products, and especially for heavy loads or bulk cargoes, such as coal, coke, ores, or grains. Arguably, the Industrial Revolution took place best where cheap water transport by canal, navigations, or shipping by all types of watercraft on natural waterways supported cost effective bulk transport. So we see that water transport accounts for roughly 80% of international trade. And if everybody's doing it, and we know what the book says about that. So, okay. The British period. Mutinies. The East India Company recruited several upper caste soldiers and adapted its military practices to the requirements of their religious rituals. Consequently, the overseas service, considered polluting to their caste, was not required of them. During the First Anglo-Burmese War, 1824 through 26, the Bengal army was ordered to go to Chittagong. Since no bullock carts were available and since sea voyage was a taboo, the Indian soldiers were asked to march to Chittagong by land. The soldiers were concerned about the difficulty involved in a land march and were also afraid that their superiors might force them to take a sea voyage if the march failed. As a result of these fears, the 47th Regiment refused to march. This resulted in a mutiny on the 2nd of November in 1824 at Barrackpore. The General Service Enlistment Act of 1856 required the new recruits to serve overseas if asked. The serving high caste sepoys were fearful that this requirement would be eventually extended to them. Thus, the Hindu soldiers viewed the act as a potential threat to their faith. The resulting discontent was one of the causes of the Indian Rebellion of 1857. Cellular Jail, the British Indian prison of the on the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, was known as Kalapani. An incarceration in this jail threatened the convicts with the loss of caste and the resulting social exclusion. So if you've watched the Pirates, you should know a little bit about the East India Trading Company. So the East India Company, EIC, also known as the Honorable East India Company, HEIC, East India Trading Company, EITC, sound like tax lingo. The English East India Company, or after 1707, the British East India Company, and informally known as John Company, Company Bahadur, or simply the Company, was an English and later British joint stock company founded in 1600. It was formed to trade in the Indian Ocean region, initially with the East Indies, the Indian subcontinent, and Southeast Asia, and later with Queen China. The company seized control of large parts of the Indian subcontinent, colonized parts of Southeast Asia and Hong Kong after the First Opium War, and maintained trading posts and colonies in the Persian Gulf residencies. Originally chartered as the Governor and Company of Merchants of London trading into the East Indies, the company rose to account for half of the world's trade during the mid 1700s and early 1800s, particularly in basic commodities including cotton, silk, indigo dye, sugar, salt, spices, saltpeter, petre, tea, and opium. The company also ruled the beginnings of the British Empire in India. The company eventually came to rule large areas of India, exercising military power and assuming administrative functions. Company rule in India effectively began in 1757 after the Battle of Plassey and lasted until 1858, when following the Indian Rebellion of 1857. The Government of India Act 1858 led to the British Crown assuming direct control of India in the form of the new British Raj. Despite frequent government intervention, the company had recurring problems with its finances. The company was dissolved in 1874 as a result of the East India Stock Dividend Redemption Act enacted 1 year earlier. As the Government of India Act had by then rendered it vestigial, powerless, and obsolete, the official government machinery of the British Raj had assumed its governmental functions and absorbed its armies. Okay, we're not going to read all this. Okay, guys. Okay, early voyages to the East Indies. Sir James Lancaster commanded the first East India Company voyage in 1601 aboard the Red Dragon. After capturing a rich 1,200-ton Portuguese carrack in the Malacca Straits, the trade from the booty enabled the voyagers to set up two factories, one at Bantam on Java and another in the Moluccas Spice Islands before leaving. They returned to England in 1603 to learn of Elizabeth's death, but Lancaster was knighted by the new King James I. By this time, the war with Spain had ended, but the company had successfully and profitably breached the Spanish and Portuguese duopoly, with new horizons opened for the English. So just a little background. Okay. So the indentured laborer diaspora. When slavery was abolished in British companies, British colonies such as Mauritius in 1834, the authorities looked for indentured labor to replace the slaves who had been emancipated. The emissaries sent to India for this purpose were astute in attracting so-called coolies to the countries such as South Africa, Mauritius, Fiji, and the Caribbean that required cheap labor, which were often presented as promised lands. But many prospective candidates for the distant colonies expressed their fears of crossing the Kalapani. So the British often employed a stratagem to dispel the doubts of the indentured. They placed water from the Ganges in large cauldrons on the ships to ensure the continuity of reincarnation beyond the Kalapani. The sea voyage was then seen as less fearsome. The Kalapani theme features prominently in the Indo-Caribbean history and has been elaborately discussed in the writings of V.S. Nepal. Mauritian poet and critic Karl Torabulli, who is partly of Indo-Mauritian descent, describes the Kalapani as a source not only of the dissolution of identity, but also of beauty and reconstruction, leading to what he terms a choral imaginary. In modern India, the Tirupati temple does not allow a priest who has crossed the seas to enter the temple's sanctum sanctorum. In 2007, the ascension of Suganidra Tirtha to the Udupi Krishna temple was opposed by some seers because he had visited foreign countries, thus committing the offense of Saagar Rolanga, crossing the sea. In 2008, a court verdict formally allowed his ascension. In 2012, both he and his opponent, Veshwisha Tirtha, announced fasts to pressure each other on the issue. Ooh, that's a long name. Vishnun Arayanan Nambudiri, a noted poet who served as a priest at the Sri Vallabha temple, was not allowed to enter the temple after he returned from an overseas trip to London. The temple authorities, led by the Tantri chief priest, asked him to undergo a thorough cleansing, penance, and punar bleh, punaravrota, yeah, reinstallation before he would be allowed in again. Namboothiri was asked to purify himself by reciting the Gayatri mantra 1,008 times, which he refused to do. The Rashtriya Swayam Savek Sangh supported him, calling the taboo an outdated ritual. The Travancore Devaswam Board also supported him and fired two of its officials for refusing to support his reinstatement. After the board served the Thantri a show cause notice, Namboothiri was allowed back after purification by sprinkling of holy water, Tirtham. So they just got loose. Nobody holds anything sacred anymore. Well, that's it on that. Just a thought. Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Peace.